My name is Olivia Reed, and I'm staring at the one person I swore I'd never see again. 7 years ago, he walked away from me on a rainy September night, taking my heart and future with him. Now, here in the middle of this upscale Seattle coffee shop, Mason Walker stands before me, looking exactly like the beautiful mistake I've spent years trying to forget. I never believed in second chances until today. The morning had started like any other Tuesday in April. Seattle's signature rain tapped gently against my apartment windows, a soothing melody that usually calmed my nerves before big meetings. But today, no amount of rain could wash away the anxiety coursing through my veins. My presentation for Westlake Publishing was in 3 hours, and landing this contract could finally push my small literary agency into the big leagues. "You've got this, Liv," my roommate Emma called from the kitchen, sliding a mug of coffee across our granite countertop. Emma Martinez had been my rock since college, the sister I never had but desperately needed. "Thanks," I mumbled, adjusting my cream-colored blazer for the 10th time. But we both know I'm one panic attack away from completely bombing this meeting. Emma rolled her eyes, her dark curls bouncing as she shook her head. "Stop that. You're brilliant, and your proposal is solid. Now drink your coffee, and try not to overthink everything. Again." I forced a smile, knowing she was right. My tendency to overthink had been my Achilles heel since childhood, a trait that intensified after Mason left. Mason, even thinking his name after all these years, sent an unwelcome shiver down my spine. You had been college sweethearts, planning a future together until he suddenly received that job offer in Chicago. The opportunity of a lifetime, he'd called it. "You're doing it again." Emma's voice pulled me back to reality. "I can literally see you spiraling." I shook my head, forcing Mason's memory back into the carefully sealed box where it belonged. "I'm fine," I lied, gathering my portfolio and car keys. "I'm going to stop by Moonlight Cafe to review my notes before heading to the meeting." Emma nodded, giving me a thumbs up. "Knock 'em dead. And don't forget we're meeting Zach and Tyler for drinks at the Emerald tonight to celebrate your inevitable success." I smiled gratefully, wondering what I'd done to deserve a friend like her. "Thanks for believing in me," I said softly, before heading out into the misty morning. Moonlight Cafe sat nestled between a boutique bookshop and vintage record store in downtown Seattle. Its exposed brick walls and floor-to-ceiling windows made it the perfect spot to gather thoughts and find inspiration. I'd discovered it shortly after moving here 4 years ago, when I was still nursing the wounds Mason had left behind. The cafe was busier than usual this morning. I ordered my usual vanilla latte from Jasmine, the barista who knew my order by heart, then settled into the last available corner table. "Good luck with your meeting today," Jasmine called as I walked away. I turned back, surprised she remembered. "Thanks. I'll need it." I spread my materials across the small wooden table, reviewing key points of my presentation. Westlake Publishing was looking for fresh voices in contemporary fiction, and I had 3 promising authors whose manuscripts would be perfect for their upcoming catalog. So absorbed was I in my notes, I barely registered the bell above the door chiming as another customer entered. It wasn't until I heard a familiar laugh, a sound that had haunted my dreams for 7 years, that I froze. No, it couldn't be. Slowly, I lifted my gaze from my laptop screen, and there he was, Mason Walker. His dark hair was shorter now, styled more professionally than the carefree look he'd sported in college. He wore a tailored navy suit that accentuated his broad shoulders, a stark contrast to the band t-shirts and worn jeans I remembered. But his eyes, those piercing blue eyes that could see straight through to my soul, remained unchanged. He was speaking with someone, a colleague perhaps, completely unaware that my entire world had just tilted on its axis. I should leave, now, grab my things and rush past him before he noticed me, but my body refused to cooperate, rooted to the spot as though the universe had conspired to create this moment. Then, as if feeling the weight of my stare, Mason turned. Our eyes locked. The conversation he was having faltered mid-sentence. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition, then to something I couldn't quite read. Shock, regret, or something else entirely. Olivia, my name on his lips after all these years sent a jolt through my system. I managed a small nod, desperately trying to appear unaffected while my heart hammered against my ribs. Mason, I replied, my voice mercifully steadier than I felt. He excused himself from his companion and approached my table, each step bringing with it a flood of memories I'd fought hard to suppress. Our first kiss under the stars at Lake Michigan, the promises we'd whispered in the dark, the plans we'd made, the future we'd lost. It's been a long time, he said softly, standing before my table. 7 years, 2 months, and 18 days. Not that I was counting. Yes, I agreed simply, unwilling to give him more. An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and buried emotions. You look good, Liv, he finally said, using the nickname that only he and Emma were allowed to use. I ignored the flutter in my stomach. Thank you. So do you. Professional, polite, distant. Mason shifted uncomfortably, running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I remembered all too well. Are you still in Chicago? I asked, if only to fill the silence. He shook his head. No, I moved back to Seattle last month. I'm heading the new digital division at Westlake Publishing. My heart plummeted to my stomach. Westlake Publishing, my meeting. Mason would be at my meeting. The universe wasn't just conspiring against me. It was having a full-blown laugh at my expense. You're kidding, I said flatly. His brow furrowed. No, why would I? I closed my eyes briefly, gathering my composure. I have a meeting at Westlake in 2 hours. I'm pitching 3 authors to your fiction department. Understanding dawned on his face, followed by a small smile that still, infuriatingly, made my pulse quicken. Olivia Reed, literary. Of course. I saw your name on the schedule, but assumed it was another Olivia. He paused. You started your own agency. Was that pride in his voice? He had no right to be proud of me, not after what he'd done. Yes, I replied curtly. 4 years ago. Mason nodded slowly. That's amazing, Liv. You always said you would. I had. During late nights studying in our campus apartment, I'd shared my dream of discovering new voices and helping them share their stories with the world. Mason had believed in me then, before Chicago became more important than our relationship. May I? He gestured to the empty chair across from me. Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to protect the life I'd carefully built from his presence. But curiosity, or perhaps masochism, won out. Sure, I said, moving my papers to make room. Mason settled into the chair, his familiar scent, sandalwood and something uniquely him, washing over me. How have you been, Olivia? He asked, his voice low and sincere. How had I been? Devastated, at first, then angry, then determined to prove I could succeed without him, and finally, mostly healed, or so I thought, until 5 minutes ago. I've been good, I replied neutrally, busy building my agency, working with some incredible writers. I paused, then added, and you? Chicago treated you well? Something flickered across his face. Regret, perhaps. Professionally, Yes, the job was everything I hoped it would be. He hesitated, but personally, I realized too late what I'd given up to get there. My heart stuttered traitorrously in my chest. I refused to read into his words, to hope they meant what part of me still wanted them to mean. Well, I said briskly, gathering my things, it was nice seeing you again, but I should prepare for my meeting. Mason reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. The contact, however brief, sent electricity racing up my arm. Olivia, wait, please. I stilled, unable to look away from his intense gaze. I've thought about you, he said softly. Every day for 7 years, I've thought about you. I swallowed hard, fighting against the emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Don't, I whispered. You don't get to say things like that. Not anymore. Mason's expression was pained. I know I hurt you. I made the biggest mistake of my life when I left. But seeing you again, maybe it's a sign. I almost laughed at the absurdity. A sign. Mason, you walked away. You chose your career over us. One chance meeting doesn't erase 7 years. I'm not asking it to, he said earnestly. I'm just asking for coffee, a conversation. After your meeting today, maybe we could talk, really talk. The rational part of my brain screamed to decline, to protect myself from reopening old wounds, but another voice, smaller yet persistent, wondered what could happen if I said yes. I don't know if that's a good idea, I said honestly. Mason nodded, respecting my hesitation. I understand, but if you change your mind, he wrote his number on a napkin and slid it toward me. I'll be hoping you call. With that, he stood and returned to his colleague, leaving me with a napkin, a racing heart, and a decision to make. The Westlake publishing offices occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming high-rise overlooking Elliott Bay. As I rode the elevator to the 30th floor, I tried to focus on my presentation rather than the fact that Mason might be present. Stay professional, I minded myself. This meeting was too important to let personal history interfere. Olivia Reed, a receptionist, greeted me as the elevator doors opened. They're ready for you in the main conference room. May I take your coat? I handed over my trench coat, smoothed my blazer, and followed her down a corridor lined with framed book covers, many of them bestsellers I recognized. Someday, my author's works would join them. The receptionist opened a door to reveal a spacious conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. 4 people sat around a polished oak table, 3 I didn't recognize, and Mason. My step faltered briefly before I plastered on my most confident smile. Good morning, I said, extending my hand to the older woman who appeared to be in charge. I'm Olivia Reed. Thank you for meeting with me today. Catherine Westlake. She introduced herself with a firm handshake. I've heard promising things about your authors. These are our department heads. James Chen, Fiction, Alexis Moore, Marketing, and Mason Walker, Digital Development. I nodded politely to each, my gaze lingering on Mason for just a moment too long. If Catherine noticed the tension between us, she didn't comment. Please, begin when you're ready, she said, gesturing to the presentation screen. I connected my laptop and took a deep breath. For the next 45 minutes, I presented my author's work with passion and conviction, highlighting why each manuscript would appeal to Westlake's audience. Throughout my presentation, I felt Mason's eyes on me, but I steadfastly avoided meeting his gaze. Your authors show remarkable promise, Catherine said when I finished. Particularly the Jordan manuscript. That story of second chances really resonates. The irony wasn't lost on me. Thank you, I replied. Ellie Jordan writes from personal experience. Her work speaks to anyone who's ever wondered about the road not taken. Speaking of which, Catherine continued, Mason will be spearheading our new digital storytelling platform. We're looking for fresh content that works across multiple media. She turned to him. Mason, what do you think about Olivia Reed's authors for the platform launch? Mason cleared his throat, finally drawing my attention directly to him. I think they'd be perfect, he said, his eyes never leaving mine, especially the Jordan manuscript. Stories about second chances. They're important. Sometimes people make mistakes, and they deserve the opportunity to make things right. The subtext hung heavy in the air between us. Well then, Catherine said, apparently satisfied. I believe we're interested in moving forward with all three authors. James will draft the contracts, and Mason will coordinate with you on the digital elements. She stood, extending her hand again. Welcome to the Westlake family, Olivia. I shook her hand, momentarily stunned by my success. Thank you. My authors will be thrilled. As the meeting concluded, I gathered my materials, my mind racing with equal parts excitement about the deal and anxiety about working closely with Mason. Congratulations. His voice came from behind me as the others filed out. Your presentation was brilliant. I turned to face him, careful to maintain professional distance. Thank you. It seems we'll be working together. Mason nodded, a cautious smile playing at his lips. About that coffee? He asked quietly. We have a lot to discuss, professionally speaking. We both knew he meant more than just business. I hesitated, weighing my options. Working together meant I couldn't simply avoid him. Perhaps clearing the air would be best for both of us, and for my authors. All right, I agreed reluctantly. Coffee, professional discussion only. Relief washed over his features. Of course. Moonlight Cafe in an hour? I nodded, already wondering if I would regret this decision. You're having coffee with WAO. Emma's voice exploded through my phone as I walked back to my car. It's not what you think, I insisted, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. It's a professional meeting. We'll be working together on the Westlake project. Uh-huh. Emma replied skeptically, and the fact that he broke your heart into 1,000,000 pieces 7 years ago is just, what, water under the bridge? I sighed, leaning against my car. Of course not, but I'm not the same girl he left behind, Em. I can handle seeing him without falling apart. At least, I hoped I could. Just be careful, Liv, Emma said, her tone softening. I remember how long it took you to put yourself back together after he left. I don't want to see you go through that again. Her concern touched me. I know, and I promise I'll be careful. This is strictly business. Even as I said the words, I wondered who I was trying to convince, Emma or myself. Moonlight Cafe was quieter now, the morning rush having subsided. I arrived first and claimed a table near the back, away from windows and prying eyes. The last thing I needed was to be seen having an emotional breakdown in public if this conversation went south. Mason arrived precisely on time, 2 coffees in hand. He set one in front of me, a vanilla latte, exactly how I liked it. You remembered, I said, surprised despite myself. He smiled softly as he sat across from me. I remember everything about you, Olivia. I took a sip of coffee to hide my reaction, then steered the conversation to safer ground. So, tell me about this digital platform. What does it mean for my authors? For the next 20 minutes, we discussed the project professionally. Mason explained how Westlake was expanding beyond traditional publishing into interactive storytelling, creating immersive experiences around their books. My author's work would be featured prominently in the launch. Throughout our conversation, I couldn't help but notice how animated Mason became when discussing his work. His passion had always been one of the things I loved most about him. "You're doing well," I observed during a lull in our discussion. "The career you wanted." Something flickered in his eyes. Sadness, perhaps. "Yes and no," he replied carefully. "Professionally, I've achieved everything I set out to do. But success doesn't mean much when you have no one to share it with." I stiffened, unprepared for the personal turn. "Mason, I know, he interrupted gently. "Professional discussion only. But Olivia, seeing you again after all these years, I can't pretend there isn't still something between us." I set my cup down carefully, fighting to keep my expression neutral. "What happened between us was a long time ago. Not so long that I've forgotten," he countered. "Have you?" Had I? The truth was, no matter how hard I'd tried, I'd never fully moved on from Mason Walker. There had been other relationships since him, but none that compared to what we'd shared. None that made me feel the way he had. "That's not fair," I said quietly. "You left, Mason. You chose Chicago over us." "Over me." Pain crossed his features. "I made a terrible mistake," he admitted. "I thought I was doing the right thing for my career, for our future. By the time I realized what I'd lost, you'd stopped taking my calls. I remembered those calls, how each one had torn open barely healed wounds, how eventually I'd changed my number just to escape the temptation to answer." "What did you expect?" I asked, old anger resurfacing. "That I'd wait around while you built your career? Put my life on hold?" Mason shook his head. "No, of course not. I don't blame you for moving on. I've never stopped thinking about you, Liv, about us, about what could have." I swallowed hard, forcing back emotions threatening to overflow. "Why are you telling me this now? What do you want from me, Mason?" He reached across the table, his hand stopping just short of mine. "A second chance," he said simply. "Not to pick up where we left off. We're different people now, but a chance to get to know each other again, to see if there's still something worth fighting for." My heart raced as I considered his words. Part of me, the part still wounded from his departure, wanted to refuse immediately, but another part, the part that had never stopped loving him, whispered that maybe, just maybe, some things were worth risking heartbreak for. "I don't know if I can trust you again," I said honestly. Mason nodded, accepting my hesitation. "I understand, and I don't expect you to trust me right away. I know I have to earn that back, but I'm asking for the chance to try." I looked at him, really looked at him. Behind the polished exterior of the successful executive, I could still see traces of the boy I'd fallen in love with at 19. The same earnest eyes, the same gentle determination. "We'll be working together," I said cautiously. "Let's start there. Professional colleagues. See how that goes." Hope brightened his expression. "I can work with that," he agreed. "Colleagues, for now." I nodded, unsure if I was making a wise decision or setting myself up for another heartbreak. But something told me I needed to see this through, if only to finally close this chapter of my life. one way or another. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Contracts were signed, strategy meetings scheduled, and my authors were thrilled with the Westlake deal. Working with Mason proved both easier and harder than I'd anticipated. Easier, because professionally, we complemented each other perfectly. His innovative vision for digital storytelling aligned beautifully with my author's work, creating exciting possibilities none of us had imagined. Harder, because each meeting, each email, each accidental brush of hands when reaching for the same document sent my carefully constructed walls crumbling a little more. "You're falling for him again," Emma observed one evening as we shared takeout in our apartment. I stabbed at my low man with more force than necessary. "I am not," I insisted. "We're working well together." "That's..." Emma raised a skeptical eyebrow. "Uh-huh. That's why you've mentioned his name 12 times in the past hour." Had I? I hadn't even realized. "It's complicated, Em." I sighed. "Yes, there's still something there, but that doesn't mean acting on it is wise." Emma set down her chopsticks and looked at me seriously. "Look, I was there when he broke your heart. I held you while you cried yourself to sleep for months. I have every reason to hate the guy." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "But people change, Liv. Sometimes they realize their mistakes and genuinely want to make amends. The question is, are you willing to risk your heart to find out if he's one of those people?" Her question haunted me long after our conversation ended. Was I willing to risk my heart again? Could I survive if Mason walked away a second time? I didn't have an answer. At least, not yet. A month into our collaboration, Mason suggested we take Ellie Jordan to dinner to discuss the digital adaptation of her manuscript. It was a reasonable request, completely professional, yet my stomach fluttered with nervous anticipation as I agreed. "I'll pick you up at 7, he offered. "That's not necessary," I replied quickly. "I can meet you at the restaurant." Mason hesitated, then nodded. "Of course. The Harbor Room at 7:30. The restaurant." The Harbor Room was one of Seattle's finest restaurants, known for its spectacular waterfront views and intimate atmosphere. Perhaps too intimate for a business dinner, but I chose not to comment. I arrived first, dressed in a deep blue cocktail dress that Emma had insisted was professional but not too professional. Mason arrived moments later, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit. "Ellie just called," he said as he approached my table. "Her daughter has a fever. She sends her apologies but can't make it tonight." I frowned, immediately suspicious. "That's strange. She didn't call me." Mason had the grace to look sheepish. "That might be because I never actually invited her." I stared at him, my suspicion confirmed. "You lied to..." "I prefer created an opportunity," he replied, a hint of his old charm surfacing. "Olivia, we've been working together for weeks, keeping everything strictly professional, but there's so much left unsaid between us. I hoped we could talk, just us. I should have left. I should have stood up, said something cutting about deception, and walked out with my dignity intact. Instead, I remained seated, telling myself it was only because making a scene would be unprofessional. "One dinner," I said firmly, "and only because I'm mamming and this place has excellent seafood." Mason's smile was worth the compromise. "Thank you," he said softly, taking the seat across from me. The waiter appeared with menus and a wine list, as Mason ordered a bottle of Pinot Noir, my favorite, another detail he'd remembered. I studied him surreptitiously. 7 years had matured him. The boyish charm remained, but it was tempered now with a quiet confidence, a gravitas that came from experience. Lines at the corners of his eyes suggested both laughter and hardship. "You're staring," he observed, a small smile playing at his lips. I felt heat rise to my cheeks, just noting the changes. I admitted, 7 years is a long time. Mason nodded, his expression turning thoughtful. Too long, he said quietly. I wish I could get those years back. Live, do things differently. The wine arrived, giving me a moment to collect my thoughts as the waiter poured 2 glasses. When he departed, I took a fortifying sip before responding. What would you have done differently? I asked, surprising myself with the question. Mason considered this, swirling his wine gently. I would have asked you to come with me, he said finally, or I would have turned down the job, or negotiated a remote position. He shook his head. Anything but what I actually did, which was make the biggest mistake of my life and walk away from the best person I've ever known. His sincerity was disarming. I'd spent years imagining this conversation, preparing sharp retorts and dismissals, yet faced with his genuine regret, my rehearsed responses felt hollow. Why didn't you? I asked, the question that had haunted me for 7 years. Why didn't you ask me to come? Pain flashed across his features. Because I was an idiot, he said simply. I convinced myself I was doing the noble thing. You were just starting to make connections in Seattle's publishing world. Your career was taking off. I told myself it would be selfish to ask you to give that up. I set down my glass harder than intended. It wasn't your decision to make, I said, old anger resurfacing. You decided what was best for me without even discussing it. You took away my choice, Mason. He nodded, accepting the criticism. You're right, I thought I was protecting you. But really, I was protecting myself. I was terrified you'd say no, that you'd choose your career over me. So I made the choice first. He looked up, meeting my gaze directly. It was cowardly, and I've regretted it every day since. The waiter returned to take our order, providing a brief respite from the emotional intensity. We both ordered salmon, another shared preference from our past. What about you? Mason asked when we were alone again. Any regrets? I considered deflecting, keeping my vulnerabilities hidden. But something about the moment demanded honesty. I regret not fighting harder, I admitted quietly. When you told me about Chicago, I was so hurt that I shut down. I let pride keep me from asking you to stay, from suggesting alternatives. I just accepted it was over. Mason reached across the table, tentatively placing his hand over mine. This time, I didn't pull away. We were young, he said softly. We made mistakes. The question is, do those mistakes have to define us forever? Before I could answer, our food arrived. We spent the next hour talking about safer topics, our careers, mutual college friends, favorite books we'd read recently. It was surprisingly easy, falling back into conversation with Mason. Like muscle memory, my body remembered how to be with him, how to laugh at his dry humor, how to challenge his opinions, how to feel completely seen. As we shared dessert, a decadent chocolate cake neither of us could finish alone. Mason brought the conversation back to us. I'm not asking for everything back right away, Olivia, he said seriously. I know we can't just pick up where we left off, but I'd like the chance to know you again. The woman you've become. I studied him, weighing his words against the risk of heartbreak. And if it doesn't work, I asked, we still have to work together, Mason. My author's futures are tied to this project. He nodded, understanding my concern. Then we'll be adults about it. The project comes first, no matter what happens between us personally. He paused, a smile playing at his lips. But what if it does work, Liv? What if this is our second chance? The question hung between us, filled with possibility and danger in equal measure. I don't know, I answered honestly. I'll need time to think about it. Mason nodded, respecting my caution. Take all the time you need, he said. I've waited 7 years. I can wait a little longer. So, Emma pounced the moment I walked through our apartment door. How was the business dinner? She made air quotes around the words, clearly seeing through the pretense. I collapsed onto our sofa with a sigh. Ellie Jordan never existed, I confessed. It was just Mason and me. Emma's eyes widened as she sat beside me. Sneaky, she commented. I'm kind of impressed. And? What happened? I recounted the evening's conversation, including Mason's apology and request for a second chance. Emma listened intently, her expression shifting between concern and cautious hope. What are you going to do? She asked when I finished. Aya shook my head, still uncertain. I don't know. Part of me wants to run as far as possible in the opposite direction, but another part still loves him. Emma finished for me. I didn't deny it. Despite everything, despite 7 years of trying to move on, a piece of my heart had always belonged to Mason Walker. People do change, Liv, Emma said thoughtfully, and sometimes they come back into our lives for a reason. I looked at her, surprised by her shift in perspective. I thought you'd tell me to stay away from him, I admitted. Emma shrugged, a small smile playing at her lips. That was my first instinct, but seeing how he affects you, even now, maybe there's something worth exploring. Just be careful, okay? I nodded, grateful for her support regardless of what I decided. I will be, I promised, and I'm not rushing into anything. If Mason really means what he says, he'll respect that I need time. Over the next few weeks, Mason kept his word. During our project meetings, he was the consummate professional, respectful, focused, and collaborative. He never pushed for more than I was ready to give, yet small gestures revealed his continued interest. Coffee waiting on my desk before early meetings, thoughtful feedback on my author's work, a gentle text, checking if I'd made it home safely after a late-night editing session. Little by little, I found my defenses lowering. We began sharing lunch occasionally, discussing books and ideas rather than just business. Sometimes our conversations lasted long after the meal ended, neither of us quite ready to return to our respective offices. What happened after Chicago? I asked one afternoon as we walked along the waterfront, coffee cups in hand. You never really told me about your life these past 7 years. Mason was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. I threw myself into work at first, he finally said. Tried to justify what I'd given up by becoming indispensable to the company, and professionally, it worked. I climbed the ladder quickly. He paused, watching a ferry cross the Sound. But personally, it was empty. I dated occasionally, but nothing serious. No one compared to you. He glanced at me, a sad smile on his lips. I called you for months, you know. Left messages, sent emails. Eventually, your number changed. I nodded, remembering. It hurt too much, I explained softly. Hearing your voice, knowing you were building a life that didn't include me. Mason stopped walking, turning to face me. I never stopped thinking about you, Liv, he said earnestly. Even as I built that life, there was always something missing, someone missing. The raw honesty in his voice made my heart ache. Why did you come back to Seattle? I asked, the question I'd been holding back. He held my gaze steadily. Because Chicago never felt like home, he answered simply. Because I needed a change. Because... He hesitated, then continued. because part of me hoped I might find you again, even if just to apologize properly for how things ended. And now that you have, I asked quietly. Mason stepped closer, his eyes never leaving mine. Now I'm hoping for so much more, he admitted, but only if you want it too. We stood there, the Seattle skyline behind us, at a crossroads of past and future. I could walk away now, protect my heart from potential pain, or I could take a risk on the one person who had always held a piece of my soul. I'm scared, I whispered, finally voicing my deepest fear. What if we try again, and it doesn't work? What if you leave again? Mason took my hands in his touch warm and familiar. I can't promise we won't face challenges, he said honestly, but I can promise I won't walk away this time. Whatever comes, we face it together. No more making decisions for you. No more assuming I know what's best. His sincerity was palpable, his eyes clear and certain. I've spent 7 years learning what matters most, he continued, and it's not a job title, or a corner office, or industry recognition. It's this, us, the chance to build a life with someone who challenges me, inspires me, knows me, the real me. My heart pounded as I considered his words. Could I trust him again? Could I trust myself? I need you to know something, I said carefully. I'm not the same girl you left behind. I've built a life I'm mad of, a career I won't compromise. Mason nodded, understanding my meaning. I wouldn't want you to, he said firmly. Your passion, your drive, they're part of what I've always loved about you. I don't want to change you, Olivia. I just want to be part of your life again. And if another opportunity of a lifetime comes along, I challenged. His answer came without hesitation. Then we discuss it together, figure out what works for both of us. No opportunity is worth losing you again. Something shifted within me, a wall crumbling, a door opening. The fear remained, but alongside it bloomed something stronger, hope. One step at a time, I said softly. I'm not making any promises, Mason, but I'm willing to see where this goes. The smile that illuminated his face was brighter than the Seattle skyline at night. He squeezed my hands gently, careful not to push for more than I was offering. One step at a time, he agreed. That's all I'm asking for. Summer arrived in Seattle, bringing with it long golden evenings and a gentle warmth that matched the growing connection between Mason and me. We navigated our renewed relationship carefully, both professionally and personally. At work, the digital platform was taking shape beautifully. My author's stories were being transformed into interactive experiences that maintained their emotional core while embracing new narrative possibilities. Mason and I worked seamlessly together, our creative energies complementing each other in ways that surprised even Catherine Westlake. Whatever you two have going on, she commented during one particularly successful presentation. Keep it up. This is the most innovative work we've seen in years. Outside of work, we rediscovered each other slowly. Weekend walks along Alki Beach, late dinners at hole-in-the-wall restaurants, quiet evenings discussing books and dreams and fears. I learned about the man Mason had become, more thoughtful than the boy I'd known, more willing to listen, more aware of what truly mattered. And he learned about me, stronger now, more confident in my worth, unwilling to settle for less than I deserved. I'm falling in love with you all over again, he confessed one evening as we sat on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Not with the memory of who you were, but with who you are now. His words touched something deep within me. I turned to face him, my heart full of emotion I'd held back for months. I never stopped loving you, I admitted quietly, even when I hated you for leaving, even when I tried to move on. Part of me always loved you. Mason's eyes glistened in the fading light. Slowly, he leaned forward, giving me time to pull away if I wanted. I didn't. Our lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. Familiar yet new, tentative yet certain. His hand cupped my cheek with such tenderness that tears pricked at my eyes. When we parted, I saw everything I felt reflected in his gaze. Love, hope, the promise of a future together. I will never walk away again, he whispered against my lips. Whatever comes, whatever challenges we face them together. This time, I believed him. Autumn arrived with crisp mornings and falling leaves. The Westlake digital platform launched to critical acclaim, with Ellie Jordan's Second Chance romance becoming the breakout hit. Readers connected deeply with her story of lost love and redemption, a story that now felt intimately familiar to me. Art imitating life, Mason observed one evening, as we celebrated the platform's success with a small dinner at his asin. Or maybe life imitating art. I smiled, leaning into his embrace on the sofa. Either way, I think we've given Ellie's story a run for its money, I replied. Mason laughed softly, pressing a kiss to my temple. Speaking of which, he said, a note of nervousness entering his voice. There's something I've been wanting to ask you. He shifted slightly, reaching into his pocket. My heart began to race as he withdrew a small velvet box. Mason, I whispered, emotion catching in my throat. He turned to face me fully, his expression serious yet tender. I know we've only been back in each other's lives for a few months, he began, but the truth is, my heart has been yours for over 7 years, even when we were apart. He opened the box to reveal a delicate ring, a sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, not ostentatious, but elegant and unique, perfectly me. This isn't a proposal, he clarified quickly, seeing my wide eyes. At least, not yet. It's a promise. He took the ring from its box, holding it between us. This is a promise that I'm committed to us, to building a future together, to never again making the mistake of walking away from what matters most. He paused, his eyes searching mine. When we're both ready, truly ready, I'll ask you properly, but for now, I want you to know that this is real, that I'm all in, that there's no place I'd rather be than by your side. Tears filled my eyes as I listened his words. The fear that had been my companion for so long began to dissolve, replaced by something stronger, trust, not blind faith, but trust built on honesty, on growth, on the knowledge that we had both changed in ways that made us better together. I'm all in too, I whispered, extending my right hand. A promise for now, and when we're ready, Mason smiled, slipping the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, as if always meant to be there. When we're ready, he agreed, bringing my hand to his lips. Later that night, as Mason slept beside me, I gazed at the ring catching moonlight from the window. 7 years ago, I had believed our story was over, that the last time we said goodbye was truly the end. How wrong I had been. Sometimes endings are just beginnings in disguise. Sometimes the heart remembers what the mind tries to forget. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, love gives you a second chance to get it right. This time, I knew we would. The last time we said goodbye wasn't the end of our story after all. It was just the beginning of a better one. Did Mason and Olivia's second chance touch your heart? Share their journey with someone who believes in love's renewal. Like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional stories that remind us it's never too late to rewrite our endings. Your support helps our stories continue. This outros into the story's themes of second chances and renewal, while encouraging viewers to share, like, comment, and subscribe to your YouTube channel. The emotional cues are maintained to keep the same narration style consistent with the main story.